Have you ever felt a chill run down your spine when you saw a particular symbol, even though you couldn't explain why? Maybe it was a cross, a pentagram, or even something as simple as a spiral. Your rational mind had no reason to react, but something deeper inside you did. That's because symbols speak a language that bypasses your conscious mind entirely. They communicate directly with the part of you that lives beneath the surface, the part Jung called the unconscious. Today, we're going to explore why these images have such a profound impact on us, why we react to them without thinking, and what that reveals about the hidden architecture of the human mind. Let's start with something simple. Close your eyes for a moment and picture a snake. What do you feel? For most people, there's an immediate reaction. Perhaps it's fear, it's probably fascination, maybe it's disgust. But here's the interesting part. That reaction happens before you've had time to think about it. Your body responds first, and only then does your conscious mind catch up and try to explain what just happened. This is the power of symbols. They don't ask permission to affect us. They do. Carl Jung spent decades studying this phenomenon, and what he discovered was revolutionary. He found that certain symbols appear across all human cultures in all time periods, regardless of whether those cultures had any contact with each other. He called these universal symbols archetypes. The snake we just talked about? It appears in creation myths from ancient Mesopotamia, the Garden of Eden, Hindu cosmology, Native American stories, and Chinese philosophy. The same symbol, different cultures, similar meanings, transformation, danger, wisdom, the unknown. How is that possible unless there's something in the human mind itself that recognizes these patterns? Jung believed that beneath our personal unconscious, the part that holds our individual memories and experiences, there's a deeper layer he called the collective unconscious. This is where the archetypes live. It's like a shared psychological inheritance, a library of symbols and patterns that every human being is born with. We don't learn these symbols the way we learn language or math. We recognize them, and when we encounter them, something ancient in us responds. Think about the circle. Every culture has revered the circle. Mandalas in Buddhism and Hinduism, medicine wheels in Native American traditions, the halo around the heads of saints, stone circles like Stonehenge, the circular dance of whirling dervishes. Why? Because the circle represents wholeness, completion, and the self. It has no beginning and no end. It's infinite and contained at the same time. When you see a circle used in spiritual or psychological contexts, you're not just looking at a shape. You're looking at a symbol that speaks to the deepest part of human experience, the search for integration and meaning. Or take the cross. Before Christianity adopted it, the cross was already a powerful symbol. It represents the intersection of opposites, heaven and earth, spirit and matter, the vertical and horizontal dimensions of existence. It's the point where different worlds meet. That's why it shows up in cultures that had nothing to do with Christianity. The ancient Egyptians had the Ankh. The Norse had their world tree, Yggdrasil, with its horizontal and vertical branches. The symbol carries meaning that transcends any single religion because it touches something fundamental about how humans experience reality, as a meeting place of opposing forces. Now here's where it gets exciting. We don't just see these symbols in art and religion. We dream them. Jung noticed that his patients would dream of symbols they had never consciously encountered, symbols from alchemical texts they'd never read, mythological figures they'd never studied. A woman in Zurich in the 1920s would dream of an ancient Egyptian god she'd never heard of. A man would dream of a mandala structure identical to Tibetan sand paintings he'd never seen. This wasn't a coincidence. This was the collective unconscious expressing itself through the universal language of symbols. Your unconscious mind thinks in images, not words. When you're trying to process something complex, emotional, or that doesn't fit neatly into logical categories, your unconscious reaches for symbols. That's why dreams are so symbolic. Your unconscious is trying to show you something that can't be said in regular language. It's trying to communicate truths that are too big, too complex, too paradoxical for ordinary words. Let's talk about why this matters in your everyday life. You encounter symbols constantly, and they're affecting you whether you realize it or not. Corporate logos are symbols designed to trigger specific unconscious associations. The Apple logo with its bite taken out, knowledge, temptation, the forbidden fruit. Nike swoosh, movement, victory, the wing of Nike, the Greek goddess of triumph. These aren't accidents. These are carefully crafted symbols that resonate with your subconscious mind, evoking emotional responses that influence your behavior. Political movements also understand this power. Flags, emblems, colors, these aren't just decorative choices. They're symbolic systems designed to bypass rational analysis and trigger deep emotional responses. The red of revolution, the black of anarchism, the white of surrender or peace. These colors carry archetypal weight. They speak to something primal in us. And when they're used skillfully, they can move masses of people in ways that logical arguments never could. However, what's crucial to understand is that symbols are not inherently good or evil. They're neutral carriers of psychic energy. What matters is how they're used and what they're channeling. The swastika, for instance, was a sacred symbol of auspiciousness in Hinduism and Buddhism for thousands of years before the Nazis corrupted it. The emblem itself represented the sun, prosperity, and good fortune. But it was hijacked and loaded with such horrific associations that now, in the West, it triggers immediate revulsion. The symbol didn't change. Our collective relationship to it did. This is why context matters so much with symbols. A pentagram can represent protection and the 5 elements in Wiccan traditions, or it can be associated with darker occult practices depending on how it's oriented and used. A skull can represent death and danger, or it can represent the acceptance of mortality and the courage to face truth, as it did for medieval monks who kept skulls in their cells as memento mori, reminders of death. The symbol is a container, and what it contains depends on the psychic energy we pour into it. Jung discovered something else fascinating. The process he called individuation, becoming who you truly are, involves integrating the symbols that appear in your unconscious. When you dream of a shadow figure chasing you, that's not just a nightmare. That's your psyche trying to reveal the parts of yourself that you've rejected or denied. When you dream of a wise old man or woman, that's the archetype of wisdom trying to communicate guidance. When you dream of water, you're dealing with the unconscious itself, with emotions, with the flow of life. Learning to read your own symbolic language is like learning to read a map of your inner world. Most people go through life illiterate in this language. They have powerful dreams, strange reactions to images, deep responses to art and music, but they don't understand what their own psyche is trying to tell them. It's like receiving letters in a foreign language and discarding them without attempting to translate them. Here's a practical example. Let's say you keep having dreams about houses. Different houses, but always houses. In Jungian psychology, the house represents the self, the psyche. Different rooms represent various aspects of your personality. The basement is the unconscious. The attic is higher consciousness or spirituality. If you dream of discovering new rooms in a house, your unconscious is telling you there are parts of yourself you haven't explored yet. If you dream of a house that's damaged or under construction, you are likely going through a period of psychological change or healing. The symbol is revealing something about your inner state that your conscious mind might not fully recognize yet. Or let's talk about the shadow. This is one of Jung's most important concepts. The shadow is everything about yourself that you don't want to admit. Your anger, your selfishness, your capacity for cruelty, your forbidden desires. Most people spend enormous energy trying to maintain a self-image that excludes these things. But the shadow doesn't go away just because you ignore it. It appears in your dreams as a threatening figure, a criminal, or a monster. It seems in your projections, where you hate in others what you can't accept in yourself. And it seems that in your behavior when you're under stress, the mask slips and the shadow bursts through. Jung stated that integrating the shadow is essential for psychological health, not acting on every dark impulse, but acknowledging that these impulses exist, that you're capable of them, that they're part of being human. When you do this, something amazing happens. The energy that was locked up in repressing the shadow becomes available for creative and productive purposes. You become more whole, more real, more truly yourself. And symbolically, this often appears in dreams as befriending or integrating with the scary figure or finding treasure in a dark place. Now, let's connect this to why certain symbols trigger such strong reactions in society. When a symbol becomes charged with collective meaning, it carries the psychic energy of millions of people. Consider how people react to religious symbols in public spaces. The intensity of those reactions isn't really about the physical object. It's about what that symbol represents in the collective unconscious, what it activates, what it threatens, or what it promises. These debates are never really about the symbols themselves. They're about competing visions of what society should be, what values should dominate, who belongs, and who doesn't. And this is where things get dangerous. When symbols are weaponized, when they're used to divide rather than unite, they can unleash tremendous destructive power because symbols bypass critical thinking and speak directly to the emotional, instinctual parts of the brain. A symbol can evoke fear, anger, or tribal loyalty faster than any rational argument. This is why propaganda has always relied so heavily on symbolic manipulation. It's why demagogues throughout history have been masters of metaphorical language. But symbols can also heal. Jung used active imagination, a technique where you consciously engage with the symbols that appear in your dreams and fantasies. You dialogue with them, you ask them questions, you let them transform. This isn't just fantasy play. It's a genuine psychological process that can lead to profound insights and change. When you engage with your unconscious symbols respectfully and courageously, you're engaging in a conversation with the deepest parts of yourself. Art and mythology serve a similar function for various cultures. They keep the symbolic language alive and accessible. When we lose connection with myth and symbol, Jung believed we become spiritually impoverished. We lose the container for experiences that are bigger than ordinary life, experiences of awe, terror, transcendence, and meaning. This is one of the challenges of modern secular culture. We've stripped away many of the traditional symbolic systems without replacing them with anything that serves the same psychological function. And people suffer for it. They feel empty and disconnected, as if something essential is missing. What's missing is the symbolic dimension, the language that connects us to the depths. This is why people are drawn to fantasy novels, superhero movies, and video games with rich mythologies. We're hungry for symbol and story. We need them as much as we need food and water. These modern myths serve a psychological function even if they're not religious. They give us symbols to grapple with, archetypes to identify with, narratives that help us make sense of our own lives. The hero's journey, the battle between good and evil, the search for the sacred object, these aren't just entertainment. They're symbolic maps for the journey of life. So what do you do with all this? How do you live more consciously with symbols? First, pay attention to what triggers your reactions. When you have a strong emotional response to a symbol, ask yourself why. What is it triggering in you? What does it represent to your unconscious? Second, take your dreams seriously. Keep a dream journal. Look for recurring symbols and themes. Your unconscious is trying to communicate with you every single night. Third, engage with art, mythology, and story consciously. Don't just consume them passively. Ask what archetypes are being activated, what symbols are being used, and what they mean to you personally. And finally, be careful about the symbols you surround yourself with. The images in your environment continuously affect your unconscious. If you fill your space with symbols of violence, fragmentation, or despair, that's what you're feeding your psyche. If you choose symbols of growth, integration, beauty, and meaning, you're nourishing something different. This isn't superstition. It's basic psychology. Your unconscious is always learning, always absorbing, always being shaped by what it encounters. The truth is, we live in two worlds simultaneously. There's the visible world of objects, facts, and rational causality. And there's the invisible world of meaning, symbol, and psychic reality. Both are real. Both affect us. But our culture has become so focused on the visible world that we've forgotten how to navigate the invisible one. We've become like people who can read spreadsheets, but not poetry, who can build machines but can't interpret dreams. We're literate in one language and illiterate in the other. Jung believed that the goal of life isn't just survival or success. It's about individuation, becoming who you truly are, and integrating all those aspects of yourself, including the parts you've hidden or denied. And this process speaks the language of symbols. Your psyche will send you the images and symbols you need to grow, if you're willing to pay attention. The recurring dream, the synchronistic encounter with a symbol right when you need it, the artwork that stops you in your tracks, these aren't accidents. They're your unconscious trying to guide you toward wholeness. So the next time you feel that inexplicable pull toward a symbol or that visceral reaction against one, don't dismiss it. Something deep in you is responding. Something ancient and wise is trying to convey a message to you. You don't have to become a Jungian analyst to benefit from this awareness. You have to be willing to listen to the language your unconscious is speaking. Because in the end, symbols are how the unconscious communicates with consciousness, how the depths connect with the surface, how the unknown part of yourself tries to become known. Now I'd like to hear from you. What symbol has affected you most powerfully in your life? Maybe it was in a dream, maybe in art, maybe in a religious or spiritual context, maybe even in a logo or design that just stuck with you for reasons you couldn't explain. Please drop a comment and let's discuss what these symbols might mean and why they have such power over us. Remember, understanding the symbolic language of your unconscious isn't just intellectual curiosity. It's a key to understanding yourself more deeply, to living with more awareness, to finding meaning in experiences that logic alone can't explain. The symbols are already speaking to you. The only question is whether you're listening. If this video has opened up a new way of thinking for you, please hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. We will continue to explore these profound questions about consciousness, meaning, and what it means to be human. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.